This video is sponsored by VPN provider Private Internet Access. A virtual private network hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. Whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network, your data is at risk of being stolen. Using the internet without private internet access is like leaving your phone unattended. Everyone can sneak a peek at your notifications. Private internet access helps by shielding your digital life from the eyes of those that are looking to exploit your private information. More importantly, with private internet access, you can open up a world of new content from all around the globe that may have been previously unavailable to you because many websites have content that is dependent on your physical location. Private internet access works with all major streaming services, so you can access content from all over the world while you patiently wait for the latest operations room and intel report releases. With private internet access, I've been able to watch Band of Brothers, which isn't currently available on UK Netflix, but in a matter of seconds I was able to change my location to the US to watch it. Sign up via the link in the description of this video to get 83% off, plus 4 months for free, which works out as only a couple of US dollars a month. Thanks again to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. Saddam Hussein is a controversial figure who led Iraq between 1979 and 2003. He projected himself as Iraq's most influential leader and a courageous moderniser. He is regarded by some as a resolute leader who challenged Western imperialism. However, he used fear, intimidation and violence to hold his power, and his repressive regime killed thousands of people. Saddam Hussein was born on the 28th of April 1937 in the village of Al-Orja near the city of Tikrit in northern Iraq. His father disappeared before he was born, and shortly after, his older brother died. His mother was suffering from depression and sent Saddam to live with his uncle, Khairallah Talfar, in Tikrit. Saddam returned to live with his mother when he was 3, but she had remarried, and Saddam's new stepfather would beat him and make him work in the fields from a young age. According to one biographer, from the first moments of his life, there was nothing for Saddam but difficulties and hardship. He learned to fend for himself and became tough from a young age. Saddam once said himself that, "Even at a young age, I developed the temperament of a man and a fighter." Despite this, he developed a deep bond with his mother, who is described as being a strong-willed woman, who didn't shy away from speaking her mind, and regularly participated in family meetings, which were usually the reserve of men. Saddam would visit her often, and when she died in 1982, he commissioned a huge tomb for her in Tikrit to commemorate her as the mother of militants. At age 10, Saddam fled his family and returned to live with his uncle in Tikrit. His uncle became a father figure and he grew close to his cousins. He attended primary school in Tikrit, but was teased for being older than the other children. At school he developed a lifelong love of reading, but he did not respect the authority of teachers. When he was 14 years old, it is rumoured that he attempted to kill one of his teachers who had beaten him. His uncle Khairallah was an educated schoolteacher and a devout Sunni Muslim, with extreme political views. His uncle had entered the Iraqi army as an officer, and his military and political friends regularly gathered at his house. During this time, Saddam learned about patriotism and nationalism, and about Iraqi history and the political landscape. He learned about the British occupation of Iraq, and about the monarchy that was ruling Iraq at that time. His uncle had participated in the 1941 rebellion to overthrow the pro-British regime, but when the uprising was quelled, he was dismissed from the army and imprisoned for 5 years. These events were fresh when Saddam came to live with his uncle in 1947, and Saddam claimed that the humiliation he felt about his uncle's fate motivated him to participate in nationalist activities with the aim of eliminating foreign influence from Arab lands. In 1955, Saddam moved with his uncle to Baghdad and started high school. The following year, Gamal Abdel Nasser, the popular pan-Arabist leader of Egypt, nationalised the Suez Canal, and then, with help from the US, successfully withstood attempts from France, Britain and Israel to keep the Suez Canal under their control. This emboldened the Iraqi people, and riots erupted in Baghdad. Saddam had applied to the Baghdad Military Academy, but had failed the entrance exams. The riots had influenced Saddam, and in 1957, at the age of 20, he became a member of the Ba'ath Party, a small party advocating for a form of Arab nationalism and socialism. He would recall this time in Baghdad as the days of our underground freedom fighting. On the 14th of July 1958, the Ba'ath Party supported a coup led by military officers Abdul Karim Qasim and Abdul Salam Arif. The coup was successful and ended the Hashemite-led Kingdom of Iraq. The monarchy was overthrown, and King Faisal II and Prime Minister Nuri al-Said were killed. The Iraqi Republic was established, with Qasim becoming the new Prime Minister, and Abdul Salam Arif the new Deputy Prime Minister. However, divisions soon emerged because Qasim grew closer to the Communists, and Arif grew closer to the Ba'athists. At this time, Saddam was accused of murdering a local communist leader who had been a rival of his uncle, and at age 21 he was charged and sentenced to prison. He was released after 6 months and returned to Tikrit, where he continued political activities. In 1959, the Ba'ath Party decided to assassinate Qasim, and summoned Saddam to Baghdad to begin preparations. In 1959, Saddam took part in the assassination attempt on Abdul Karim Qasim, but it failed. Qasim was shot, but not fatally, and Saddam received a superficial wound to his leg. He went into hiding. Saddam claimed that he escaped by swimming across the Tigris River, and he later commissioned a novel and a movie based on his experience, which portrayed him as a hero who struggled on stubbornly, refusing to die. He also commemorated the occasion by reenacting his famous swim. Saddam was sentenced to death for his role in the assassination attempt, but he remained in hiding. He eventually escaped to Damascus in Syria before moving to Cairo, where he lived a fairly low-key life, and resumed his high school education. At age 24, he graduated high school and enrolled in Cairo University to study law, but soon dropped out to devote his full time to political work. During the Cold War era, the United States was concerned about the pro-communist Qasim, and it is rumoured that Saddam met with CIA specialists who were soliciting support for a plot to overthrow him. On the 8th of February 1963, a coalition of Ba'athists, army units and other pan-Arabist groups successfully overthrew Qasim. Abdul Salam Arif, a military officer, became the new president of Iraq. Saddam moved back to Baghdad, married Sajida, the daughter of his uncle, and they had their first child, Uday. 9 months after the first Ba'athist government came to power, factionalism was causing divisions. Saddam was plotting to assassinate Arif, but was caught and imprisoned. He managed to escape, and on the 17th of July 1968, he was involved in another Ba'athist coup. President Abdul Salam Arif surrendered, and Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr became the new president of Iraq. A new organisation called the Revolutionary Command Council was established. As President Bakr declared the completion of the revolution, Saddam stood guard behind him, carrying a machine gun. Under the Bakr regime, torture, murder and public executions were official acts used to eliminate opponents of the regime. Saddam was the head of a network of special agents responsible for acts of suppression and torture. In November 1969, Saddam became the Revolutionary Command Council's vice chair, becoming the second-ranking official in the Ba'ath Party and in Iraq. He quickly developed a reputation as a powerful and suave man. A journalist stated that he claims to be a committed revolutionary, but he lives in an elegant palace along the Tigris River, wears smartly tailored European suits, and indulges his taste for imported silk ties. He was also noted for wearing a platinum diamond-studded watch and matching diamond cufflinks. In 1976, Saddam fulfilled a lifelong dream of becoming an army man, and he was made a general. The youth were central to the future of Baathism, and in 1978, Saddam declared a massive campaign to improve literacy for Iraqis aged 15 to 45, which was recognised by an award from UNESCO. He also spoke to women's groups and espoused their role in Iraqi revolutionary society, and believed that liberating women was essential for progress. Throughout the 70s, he gained prominence with diplomatic circles, and increasingly became the public face of the regime, as he was viewed as a powerful figure by the West. He nationalised Iraq's oil industry, suppressed the Kurdish uprising, resolved long-simmering tensions with Iran, and created trade relationships which allowed him to implement a $20 billion development plan. By the end of the 1970s, He was the undisputed strongman of Iraq. On the 16th of July 1979, Bakr retired and Saddam became the new president. His opening act as president was carefully scripted to install fear and loyalty. He called a meeting of some 400 Ba'athist Party members, and with the cameras filming, he announced from the front of the room while smoking a Cuban cigar that he had uncovered a conspiracy against him, and the conspirators were amongst them. One by one, the names of alleged traitors were called out, and security men removed them from the room. Those proclaimed guilty were sentenced to death, and Saddam arranged for himself and other members of the RCC to serve as executioners. By now, he had 2 sons and 3 daughters, and portrayed himself as a father figure, showing images of a happy home life. Although his family lived an extravagant lifestyle, Saddam claimed that he tried to teach his children a sense of balance, and did not want them to think they were above others. He regularly gave advice to the public, in particular to matters of personal hygiene, and he shared tips on cleanliness with the nation. In 1979, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat signed a peace agreement with Israel. The Arab nations rejected the agreement and put sanctions on Egypt. With Egypt's role as the leader of Arab nations in sharp decline, Saddam sensed a critical opening. He set about repairing relations with his Arab neighbours, in particular Syria and Saudi Arabia. The Iranian Revolution concerned a number of key Arab regimes, and Saddam strengthened his position as the bulwark against Islamism. He ordered the invasion of Iran in 1980, and the war dragged on for 8 years. It is estimated that the Iran-Iraq war killed 1 million people, and left Iraq riddled with debt. Saddam expected other oil-rich Arab nations who he had fought for to come to his aid, but he received no assistance. He then accused Kuwait of damaging Iraq's economy by driving the price of its oil down, and in August 1990, he ordered the Iraqi army to invade Kuwait. This led to a global coalition to form and conduct Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, which forced Saddam to withdraw from Kuwait in 1991. After the war, Saddam renewed his efforts to maintain his grip over power in Iraq. However, the country was fundamentally changed by years of war and economic sanctions, and people's standard of living declined. Iraq's defeat triggered internal rebellions by Shias and Kurds. Saddam ruthlessly and brutally repressed the uprisings, killing and displacing thousands of people. Meanwhile, Saddam and his family continued to amass a vast fortune. In 1991, an investigator claimed that over the course of the previous decade, Saddam and his family had skimmed at least $10 billion from Iraqi oil sales. He made a practice of publicly displaying his personal wealth as a sign of his power, and to help close allies in return for their loyalty. By the end of the 1990s, it's estimated that he had built as many as 50 palaces. They stood as symbols of his power, despite his military defeat. Each palace was fitted with bunkers and tunnels, and was guarded by a contingent of Republican Guard. Everywhere in Iraq, there were signs of Saddam's power. His posters were plastered on every building, and the Guinness Book of World Records listed Saddam as the world's most frequently painted head of state. He also commissioned a museum devoted to his own life. To reassert his power, Saddam called for a national referendum in 1995. There were no opponents. Iraqis were simply asked, "Do you agree that Saddam Hussein should be president of Iraq?" 99.6% of the Iraqi electorate reportedly voted yes. Saddam relied heavily on his family to keep a tight rein on the Iraqi government, but he faced growing turmoil within his family. Saddam was particularly close to a man called Hanar Jadro, his personal food taster responsible for checking for poison. Hanar introduced Saddam to a beautiful woman who he took as his second wife. This broke the relationship with his first wife Sajida, and angered his oldest son Uday, who went on to murder Hanar, apparently with a club at a dinner party in front of guests. When Saddam heard the news of his friend's death, he vowed to have Uday killed, but decided to spare him. In the aftermath of the Gulf War, Saddam retreated more from public life, and given his love of reading, he turned to writing novels, although it's debated how much he wrote himself. His debut novel was called Zabiba and the King. It is about a king who falls in love with a poor commoner called Zabiba. The love between them is meant to symbolize the love between Saddam and all Iraqis. He wrote 4 novels in total, which mingled romance and war stories of fact and fiction. Distribution of his novels was ambitious, and the people were expected to purchase copies, and they were promoted heavily. In 2003, the United States and its coalition allies invaded Iraq, accusing Saddam of developing weapons of mass destruction and for harbouring militant enemies of the US. For a detailed look at the causes of the 2003 invasion of Iraq, please see our previously released video on the Intel report, linked in the description and in the video end screen. The Ba'ath Party was banned, and Saddam went into hiding. After his capture on the 13th of December 2003, his trial took place under the Iraqi interim government. On the 5th of November 2006, Saddam Hussein was convicted by the Iraqi High Tribunal of crimes against humanity related to the 1982 Dujail massacre, the killing of 148 Shiites from Dujail, in retaliation for an earlier assassination attempt. Saddam Hussein was sentenced to death by hanging, and was executed on the 30th of December 2006.